So why are you burnt out? You're being forced to live in a way that causes friction with who you really are and how you function. I'm sure if you look back to your childhood, to school, you can probably remember not really being able to learn the same way. Maybe it was the material in general. Maybe it was that you had difficulty following verbal instructions. You probably struggled to perform on tests, struggled to get good grades in a lot of areas. Those themes continue to show up as you age into adulthood and enter the workforce in different ways. Fitting in with societal expectations, with understanding social cues and conversations, knowing how to date, knowing how to feel people out. Nobody wants to be in their adult life and working their hardest and still feel like they can't do anything right. The pain of realizing that a lot of the difficulty that you've had in your life is because you didn't quite understand what was going on with you. And then there's deep feelings of unworthiness or self-loathing because you don't really quite understand why so many other people seem to have it figured out. The better you can understand yourself, the better you can start developing routines that help you get into your flow, and the more authentically you can express yourself as a person who is neurodiverse, on the spectrum, what have you. It's going to bring you the best of your world, the world that you create. Stop viewing your neurodiversity and your uniqueness as the thing that brings you pain and something that is wrong with you. Gaining greater awareness, building better routines, restoring balance, and developing clarity will help you stay sane. It will help you thrive. So are you neurodiverse? Maybe you're ADHD, maybe you're on the spectrum, and you've just reached a point in your adult life where you're burnt out and you don't really know what to do next. Maybe your lifestyle's no longer working, maybe your career's not working, maybe you're not sure what's even not working, but you know something needs to change. Well, let me tell you what, I've been there, and now I help people just like you figure it out. So I'm here to help you bring awareness to the things that might be contributing to it and what you can do about it. So why are you burnt out? If I had to boil it down to one thing, I'd say it's that you're being forced to live in a way that causes friction with who you really are and how you function. And that can be based on what society or the people around you expect of you. There's just a lot of misunderstandings between neurodiverse and neurotypical people about the way us neurodiverse folks function in the world. It can be tough. And I'm sure if you look back to your childhood, to school, you can probably remember not really being able to learn the same way, and that causing friction with trying to keep up with the rest of your classmates. Maybe it was the material in general. Maybe it was that you had difficulty following verbal instructions. Maybe it was that the typical classroom setting was far too controlled for someone with your attention deficit issues. You probably struggled to perform on tests, struggled to get good grades in a lot of areas that you weren't particularly interested in, especially. But most folks who are on the higher functioning end, they tend to do something that a lot of people don't understand until around this time, maybe in their 30s in their life, that you learn to mask and learn that there was something a little bit different about you. And so to fit in, to avoid friction in your life, you probably force yourself to conform in ways that don't really suit you, just to blend in with societal expectations of what it means to function as a human being. Those themes continue to show up as you age into adulthood and enter the workforce in different ways. Maybe holding jobs has always been really difficult for you, or finding something that you're interested in doing. Maybe you have a pattern of getting in trouble for the same types of mistakes, failures to meet deadlines, certain things that, despite your best efforts and you feeling as though you're confident to do your job, you still fall short. And it can be really disappointing and depressing. Nobody wants to be in their adult life and working their hardest and still feel like they can't do anything right. As an adult, I found out that I really struggled in particular with writing. That showed up in college, especially when tests started to get harder, and in law school tenfold, where tests were very heavily dependent on writing and writing under pressure, which is the worst combo for me. Before I worked for myself and came up with systems to help combat it, I used to get in trouble when I worked for other people for honestly a lot of typos. And it wasn't that I was being careless, it wasn't that I wasn't trying. I would read the same paper and proofread it several times, and I would still miss these little tiny things. Nothing makes you feel more incompetent than when simple things like that are the things getting in your way. The feedback I always got was that I was intelligent, but I just didn't apply myself. Or, I was intelligent and I knew the answer, but I made mistakes in expressing it. And I'm sure a lot of you identified with a lot of that. And probably a lot more things that we'd all identify with each other about. And then there's the social aspects of things. As you become an adult, fitting in with societal expectations, with understanding social cues and conversations, knowing when to talk, knowing when not to talk, knowing how to date, knowing how to make advances or not make advances, knowing how to feel people out. This is in particular for the autism crowd. And then in the work setting again, having trouble getting along with people. Not because you're trying to be disagreeable, but because you're trying to ask questions to understand something. And people take it as an attitude or something that it is definitely not. Sometimes folks who are neurodiverse are amazing, amazing problem solvers. But they find out in particularly the corporate world that doesn't really gain you any favors in the workplace sometimes. Conversely, sometimes what you think is you trying to be a good employee is seen as you challenging authority. The unfortunate thing about a lot of corporate workforces is that oftentimes they don't really want huge innovators. Sometimes they're more focused on having people work for them who are just good at following orders and doing what they're told. And following a system that this company or this industry is prescribed to. It becomes very painful when your efforts to be your best self and show up to the job or to show up in life and offer really good advice or help in any way you can are met with misunderstandings about your intentions. Who wouldn't feel like shit in that circumstance? This can become particularly painful for those who are late diagnosed with either ADHD or ADD or being on the spectrum or something like that. The pain of realizing that a lot of the difficulty that you've had in your life is because you didn't quite understand what was going on with you and how that would affect how people would view you. Those blind spots in our awareness can be really painful the longer that we are stuck trying to force ourselves into a life that maybe just doesn't quite fit us. So what's the cost of all this? A few things. For one, a fried nervous system. The lack of awareness that you have, no fault of your own, before you find out about these things yourself, that don't really help you learn how to do better or function better in a way that is more comfortable for you to walk through life. By the time you get to your late 20s, your 30s, it can wreak total havoc on your physical and mental health. We're talking anxiety, depression, a lack of physical fitness because of just imbalances in your energy, and even malnutrition and chronic dehydration. I know that sounds a little crazy, but it's really common for folks, particularly with ADHD or anybody that has a tendency to go into hyperfocus when they're working on something that is either important to them or that they just tend to be really focused on. You can forget to do things like feed yourself or drink water for a really long time, and doing that often, daily, can lead to long-term chronic issues. You're kind of locked in fight or flight. You are overstressed and overstimulated from trying to keep up with neurotypical expectations in the world, and that's not really who you are and how you function. So you're always trying to make a to-do list of things that isn't really feasible for you. It's going to leave you feeling frazzled, like you can't get things done, find balance, or just live the way you want. And then there's deep feelings of unworthiness or self-loathing because you don't really quite understand why so many other people seem to have it figured out, but you can't figure it out, even though you're working every day and you're trying your hardest. And there are those deep feelings of rejection because of mishaps and misunderstandings with people who may not understand how you function best, and it's caused some friction in the past. A lot of us folks that are neurodiverse, we've got our quirks, and they can be misunderstood pretty greatly. Which brings me to strained relationships, misunderstandings between what you mean based on what you asked or what you said, failure to remember the little things that might be important to your partner or the people around you, forgetting things altogether, and forgetting to show up on time, which, for those of us in the world who have a partner that really wants to be on time, can really be a struggle. And then there's the good old, when you're a little bit dysregulated, you're focused on something, and you're not doing a good job of paying attention to the person who's speaking to you. If we're not in the right place to be listening, we won't listen at all. Getting yourself in the right frame of mind, in the right focus to have real one-on-one conversations with people is really important, especially if you're neurodiverse and you struggle with that. So if a lot of this sounds like you, now that you have the awareness, what do you do? Where do you start? Hey there, if you're new to the channel, my name's Ashley. I'm a life coach. I help people with big life changes, spiritual shifts, finding their purpose, and thriving with neurodiversity. On this channel, we talk about a lot of different topics, but it's all meant to help you improve, help you understand yourself and the world around you. So if you're into that, be sure to like and subscribe. I've got a lot more coming on my channel, and I'd love to see you there. I think the most important thing to do is start taking an inventory of the things that are either going on in your physical space around you, in your lifestyle in general, in your career. What is going on that is really causing you the most stress? What's going unaddressed? What do you need to do to keep things more consistent, more organized? I'm looking at you. And get things to flow with who you really are and how you function. Just because you don't function like other people doesn't mean A, that you can't function, and B, that you can't function amazingly. But it may not just be in the same way that others do, and that's okay. Once you've kind of taken that inventory of the top priority things that you need to start with, maybe you pick 3 to 5 to start. I want you to make a simple rule, a trick maybe, that gets you to do that thing, or it gets you to remember to follow your own guideline. And this can be super personal, so I can't really tell you what that thing is sometimes. It's really up to you. Maybe making lists and keeping it somewhere is good for you, but for the neurodiverse crowd, I'd highly recommend making it the simplest, smallest list possible, something that you barely have to read. And also be thinking about when things have been going really right for you, what were you doing differently? What was different about your routine? For most people who are neurodiverse, and particularly for those on the spectrum, building a very specific routine is actually really helpful because sometimes we live and die by routines. On Sunday, when you've got time, you spend an hour cleaning the house. Whatever your pain points are, start there. Or whatever is causing friction somewhere else. If your space is disorganized and therefore you can't find things and therefore you always tend to leave the house late because you think you've left yourself enough time to get ready, but really you've spent half of it looking for shit that you need to get out the door. Maybe you need to start by organizing that space and making everything have a specific place. That's a rule I have to live by in this house. That's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me from letting things fall into disarray. That's what helps me keep this place clean. That's what helps me be, most of the time, on time. Second, be about your energy. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, it is your most important resource, and you have to carefully guard it. If you're pouring a ton of it into the wrong things, you'll be zapped by midday, and you're not going to be productive. You might be zapped by the first hour of work if you've done all the wrong things first. So, knowing yourself and knowing your limits is really important here. Knowing your quirks, if you will, and I mean that in a positive way. Knowing the things that tend to set you off, that stress you out. It doesn't mean that there are things that you can totally avoid doing forever, but maybe you need to set yourself up for success in the time and the place that you choose to do it, or the frequency with which you do it. Maybe it has to happen less. Maybe it has to happen more. It's important to know when you need to limit your time doing certain things. For me, this is social settings. If it's a one-on-one or a very small group, maybe less than 10 people, I tend to do pretty well. If it's more than that, I've got about a 2-hour battery on that. Max. 1 hour ideally 2 is fine. If it goes beyond that, I know it's going to be a long day for me. And if it's something I have to do, I prepare accordingly. I am very kind to myself leading up to it and after it as well. Then there's these little boundaries that you violate with yourself. What do I mean by that? In particular, hyperfocus and overworking because of it. When I'm feeling really passionate about something, I'll forget that I have a stomach that needs to be fed, or I'll forget that there's something else that I was supposed to do with my day. I could very easily get swept away. Set yourself an alarm. Don't get swept away. If it's something that, another thing, sometimes you overwork and you blow your sleep schedule. That's a big, big no no for people like us. We need our rest. We all need our rest. But the neurodiverse crowd really needs their rest. Consistency is so important for us. And then there's violating your own boundaries because you're people pleasing. And I think our rejection sensitivity, feeling a little outcast maybe as a kid, kind of pushes us to. There are other things that can cause people pleasing, but I do think that neurodiversity and trying to fit in is one thing that can drive that. So set boundaries with yourself. When you know it's time to call it for the day and somebody asks you for a favor, really consider whether that is a good expenditure of your energy. If you have other stuff you have to do, you might need to save your energy, and that's okay. You need to not guilt yourself over that. I have a client who is neurodiverse and has to be very, very strict with overworking and getting sucked into a time warp because he gets really into what he's doing. So he sets alarms. He makes really specific guidelines about how he wants to approach whatever he's working on. And instead of letting himself get into that creative flow, which he loves so much, and staying up all night and screwing up his sleep schedule for the next 3 days, he knows he has to cut off at a certain point. And that's an important tool that a lot of us can use. So set those boundaries, mostly with yourself. Set those alarms, make the list, take that inventory, and then create routines that calm your soul. This applies to everyone, but particularly to us. If you're going into something and your energy is already kind of frenetic because you got off on the wrong foot, it's definitely not going to help. Learn to release excessive energy that you might have, particularly if you have like ADHD. Find activities that you enjoy well enough to do consistently and release that energy a few times a week at least, or strategically throughout the week where you know it will help you going into the next thing. It will help you kind of transition into your next activity for that day or that week. Fit those things in because it helps keep you balanced. It's also important to know what to do when you're kind of past that point and you're in emergency territory, which for me is breathing exercises. Learn some. There are guided ones to help you relax. If you take a deep breath in, all the way in, and hold it for a sec, and push all the air out like until you can't breathe out anymore, and do that 5-10 times for a whole minute or two, however long you need to do it. I mean, don't make yourself pass out or something, but do what you need to do in the moment. Just stop, go to the restroom, get a quiet space somewhere, or just put your head down at your desk and just take a second and do it. It will help you calm down and move on to the next thing. Learn to rescue the day and the moment with those breathing exercises. And then in your spare time, start learning to meditate. I highly recommend just you doing really short, maybe 5 minutes, a couple minutes, a guided one on YouTube or wherever. There's plenty out there that are free. Just try it. Do it before bed, do it when we wake up. Do it when it makes sense for you. It doesn't really matter how you start. It's just important that you start and learn to build up a little more endurance with it. So just start and learn to build up a little more endurance as you go. And once you've done those things, then it's time to take the biggest step, which is to learn to live more as your authentic self. The first one, the big one, you have to stop trying to go against the grain of who you are in your lifestyle, in your career especially. That's like half of your adult life spent in an office or doing whatever you do. If it doesn't really suit you and you're neurodiverse, it's going to be even more painful than it is for neurotypicals who kind of ignore their inclinations. Your hyperfixations, your kind of natural inclinations, those can be your superpower. A lot of folks who are neurodiverse are often made to feel like they're just kind of a problem and they don't really feel valued. But I promise you that most of us are actually truly gifted at something. And that could be our gift to the world and to ourselves. Who wouldn't want to do something for work or to have a lifestyle that kind of lets them explore their natural inclinations as much as possible? First of all, who wouldn't want that in general? But particularly for people who are neurodiverse, who tend to have like hyperfixations and hyperinterests. If you're not ready to make that jump yet, that's okay. But you can also start planning and start making steps in that direction. And that's one thing I help people with. When you learn to lean into those things that almost make you feel like superhuman and like you aren't neurodiverse and you're really functional, when you learn to lean into those things, it just always tends to bring more of the people and things that you love towards you. It's a law of attraction thing. The more I have leaned into my inclinations, spoken about my interests, it's brought the best people into my life and given me once in a lifetime type meetings and opportunities that I probably wouldn't have had if I had just stayed quiet and tried to be like everybody else. Sometimes it's scary to be yourself. Honestly, for everyone, but for neurodiverse people, very much so. But that's really the key to unlocking the best experiences you could really have and the most authentic connections and feelings that you've probably always wanted. The better you can understand yourself, the better you can start developing routines that help you get into your flow, and the more authentically you can express yourself as a person who is neurodiverse, on the spectrum, what have you. It's going to bring you the best of your world, the world that you create. Stop viewing your neurodiversity and your uniqueness as the thing that brings you pain and something that is wrong with you. Gaining greater awareness, building better routines, restoring balance, and developing clarity will help you stay sane. It will help you thrive.